vroeg in die jaar reeds staakwerkers by Namib Mills, maar hoe gaan hierdie staking Jan Alleman en nog belangriker sy sak raak? Hallo en welkom by Kletskompas, ek is hier Januarie van der Walt en ek gesels vandag met die arbeidskenner Herbert Jauch, juis oor hierdie einste kwessie, as ook ander arbeidskwessies wat vroeg in die jaar opgeduik het. Maar voor dit gesels ek en Annemarie de Tooy oor die nuus in Môre se Republikein en nou gaan kyk jy na die nuutste inskrywings in Republikein se kiekie kompetisie. Ons is nou weer terug. Annemarie de Tooy is saam met my in die Kletskompas ateljee. Annemarie, hoe gaan dit? Dit is amper Vrydag.
Dit gaan goed, ek is bly dis amper Vrydag en kan ek net sê ek is so bly om terug te wees op Klets saam met jou.
Ons kan sien jy is bly. Jy's nou al heeldag in 'n laggerige by. As hierdie in 'n lagsaak ontaard, nee, hulle verkoop dit nie by die apteke nie. Ongelukkig, ek wens hulle het.
Ja, ek ook. Dat almal net so vrolik kon gewees het soos ons.
Okay, Annemarie, so gepraat van vrolik, jy het 'n lekker vrolike storie geskryf oor DB Audio.
Yes.
Veiligheid voor oë hou.
Ja, so DB Audio het die 18de Februarie die eerste van sy soort veiligheidsseminar vir groot geleenthede wat hulle aanbied. Hulle het 'n klomp kenners wat inkom van Suid-Afrika af, dan natuurlik ons eie Namibiese mense. Dit word by die nuwe cricketstadion die Oval aangebied en hulle sê alhoewel ons reëls het vir sulke groot geleenthede, word dit nie regtig op hierdie stadium nagekom nie en wat hulle hoop om te bereik daardeur is half dat ons 'n manier kry om dit na te kom en half bietjie strenger te wees op die enforcement van daai reëls.
Ja, ek moet vir jou sê, baie van die mense, ek ken 'n paar mense wat jy weet klankingenieurs is en al wat 'n ding is. En hoe hulle opgelei word is eintlik maar net, ag weet jy, Adam is tog ons goed in dit. Adam, kom leer sommer gou vir Johnny om dit te doen.
Kom ons sit jou gou daar.
gaan saam met Adam gaan hoor wat doen hy en laat hy vir jou sê wat doen hy en dan. So dis redelik informeel. Jy weet jy kan mense op kursusse stuur vir hierdie tipe dinge, maar weer eens om Suid-Afrika toe te moet gaan vir so iets is geweldig duur. Dit is jy weet permitte en al wat die dinge wat uitgesorteer moet word, is makliker om nou maar net te sê, weet jy, Adam is nogal so right, Johnny gaan daar.
Gaan leer maar, gaan hoor
ja,
wat het Adam
gaan hoor
te sê.
gou by Adam, wat sê hy is sy geheim. Ja, so ek dink dit is absoluut nodig, en ek moet vir sê, dit is 'n beroep, wat ek dink die mense wat dit doen, het baie integriteit daarin. Jy weet, en ek dink dit is 'n ding met baie groot bydra tot Namibiese media en Namibiese vermaaklikheid, en ek dink hierdie indruk wat ons het dat Namibiese vermaaklikheid fantasties is, jy weet, want Lisa Allers en Salvador Mowers en al daai mense kan verskriklik mooi staan en sing op die verhoog, en Aixa kan vir jou 'n rap gooi wat jy nie kan glo nie, maar as die klankingenieurs nie hulle werk behoorlik gedoen het nie, word dit nie behoorlik oorgedra nie. En ek dink hulle is verskriklik trots op die werk wat hulle doen, en ek dink hulle maak 'n baie groot bydra tot
ek dink ook dis 'n bietjie 'n meer verneinige werk as wat ons besef, want ek dink nie jy kyk dalk na hierdie ou se lightboard of sy en jy dink okay, hy druk 'n paar knoppies, maar ek dink dis baie meer verneinig as dit, want laat hy nou een verkeerde knoppie druk en jy het jou R300 spandeer op jou fees waar jy is en jy kan niks hoor nie want hy het 'n verkeerde knoppie gedruk. So ek dink dis baie belangrik wat hulle doen.
Ja, en ek dink daar is in 'n mate 'n talent, soos wat ek hoor, my vriendin se man is 'n musikant. En hy doen ook baie van hierdie goedheid by die Oudtshoornsfees gewerk, baie van sy vriende is ook klankingenieurs. En ek dink, soos wat hulle onder mekaar praat, daar's name wat saak maak in daai gesprekke. Jy weet, is 'n jassou, Adam is goed, Adam het 'n talent hiervoor, jy weet, of weet jy, Won is baie goed daarin, die musikante hou verskriklik baie van hom. Jy weet, daar's name wat saak maak in sulke gesprekke, en dit lei jou om te dink, dit maak 'n verskil of jy die regte knoppie druk of nie. Dis nie sommer gou vir knoppies druk.
Ja, dis nie net gou doedoe en dan gaan jy aan nie.
Ek dink ek hou van daai knoppie. Daai knoppie lyk
die een wat pink skyn, dis my knoppie.
Ja, die enetjie wat so multicolor. Daai lyk so cool knoppie, kom ons druk vir hom.
Ja, so ek dink is belangrik. Ek meen, en geleentheidsveiligheid oor die algemeen, ek meen, dis 'n groot ding dat ons fokus op daai mense en die klankingenieurs, maar ook net om die mense wat by die geleenthede is veilig te hou is net so belangrik.
Absoluut.
Want ek
As
was
jy oor 'n kabel val,
Ja, exactly, omdat 'n kabel nou nie reg gelê is nie, jy trip, breek 'n enkel dan wat.
Ja.
So daai tipe van goed en die barricading en daai tipe van goed is net so belangrik want barricade jy nou nie 'n crowd reg nie en Fransjo van Kou kom nie weer na jou land toe nie. Dis net so.
afgesien van dit, as iemand 'n kabel aftrap, wat ook al by ons by netwerktelevisie in die vroeë dae, kan ek vir sê hoeveel kabels is afgetrap nie, en dan hoep, daar gaan 'n kamera, jy weet.
Of 'n hele produksie is
Ja, jou hele
goners.
verhoog, imagine, hy gaan net
Omdat een
Peergreef
persoon-
staan nog daarbo, daar nie dit toe hy dink na huising vir jou van die son wat skyn en Somerset West en volgende oomblik niks nie. Dan dan staan ons nou maar net en kyk vir Daniel dit toe. Ja, afgesien van dit, verskriklike lekker storie in platteland, ek is baie opgewonde oor hierdie storie. Die gemeenskap van Korrigas, leerlinge, gewone gemeenskapslede wat bymekaar gekom het en vir 'n bejaarde burger hulle sy huis oorgedoen het.
Dis so oulik.
Ek het ook toe Fransjoes my sê, dis ek so. Dit is verskriklik oulik. Hulle het planne, hulle wil graag, kom ons sê nou nie hulle planne nie, maar hulle wil graag 50 huise, daar kan ons die foto's op die skerm sien. Hulle wil graag dit vir 50 ander mense doen. En ek dink dis so 'n eg Namibiese platteland storie.
Ja.
Jy weet, ek moet vir jou sê ek het in Suid-Afrika groot geraak, gedeelteliks hier in Namibië. En daar's sekere dinge wat jy net nie vir iemand anders kan sê nie.
Ja,
van Namibië.
Wat hulle nie sal verstaan as hulle dit nie
Ja,
self
hulle kan
beleef
kom
nie.
kuier, hulle kan 'n bier kom drink by Andy's of by Goodfellas of waar ook al hulle wil. Maar daar's sekere dinge wat hulle net nie gaan snap aan Namibië totdat jy hier gebly het nie. En dit is my so mooi. Ek en Fransjoes het gister gepraat oor aktiewe burgerskap. Die walvisbaaiers wat self die slaggate toegemaak het, eergister, wat self die slaggate toegemaak het en reggemaak het. En weer so 'n mooi voorbeeld van aktiewe burgerskap vir my. En ek dink dit is die mooi in Namibië is ons kyk na veral bejaardes.
Ja.
Wat meer kwesbaar is. Dit gaan nie net altyd oor ek en jy nie. Ek dink ons Namibiërs, ons kyk nog langs ons.
Ja, ons kyk
Wat
nog
gaan
vir die om jou mense en
Ons Namibiërs sê ek asof ek hier gebore is. Ek is ongelukkig nie,
ons albei is
maar
reg Suid-Afrikaans.
ek is genaturaliseer
Okay.
Namibiër.
Okay.
En Aiksa het so gesê.
Het Alexa so gesê?
Kletsrymer Aiksa het so gesê, hy het op Kletskompas kom
Hoe kan
kuier
ons
en toe ons
stry?
uitstap. Toe vra hy my nou, hoe lank is jy nou al in Namibië? Ek sê vir hom, nee, nou seker so 13, 14 jaar. Hy sê vir my, nee, jy's in Namibië, jy's een van ons, jy kan maar vergeet. jy het 'n paspoort en dis dit, maar ja, so verskriklike mooi voorbeeld van Namibies wees.
Nou en ek dink ook in waar ons vandag is, fokus ons so baie in aktiewe burgerskap op ons jeug. So dis vir my baie oulik om te hoor dat daar iemand is wat na die bejaardes ook kyk en dat daar 'n gemeenskap is wat besef hoe belangrik jou bejaardes nog steeds vir jou gemeenskap is.
Ja.
Want sonder hulle sou die gemeenskap nie gewees het waar hy nou is nie. En hulle het jou opgebou tot op daai punt. So dis vir my lekker om te hoor dat iemand hulle nou weer verder opbou.
Afgesien van dit, ek glo baie vas bejaardes kan nog aktief bydra. Jy weet, baie van hulle
100%.
wil. Hulle het soveel kennis. As jy byvoorbeeld by Senior Parkie so in Windhoek sou instap, oom my kan vir jou kar regmaak en hierdie tannie kan vir jou rok maak en hierdie tannie kan vir jou daarmee help. Hulle wil so graag nog bydra tot die samelewing, jy weet. So dit gaan nie net vir my oor teruggee nie, dit gaan oor daai waardigheid in hulle sien dat jy is nog steeds waardig, jy is nog steeds mens. Jy het nog steeds so baie om vir mense te leer. Maar ja, Annemarie, ons gaan jou maar laat dat jy kan gaan leer by die wêreld wat jy wil leer by die res van die dag. Dankie dat jy by ons was. Ons gesels nou met arbeidskenner Herbert Jauch net nadat ons 'n draai gaan maak by die weer.
Life is unpredictable and one needs to be protected against any eventuality. Get Santam legal access from as little as $50 Namibian a month for when you find yourself in need of legal representation due to civil cases, criminal prosecution, and family matters such as divorce, child maintenance, and custody. It also covers labor disputes, disciplinary hearings, and unfair dismissal or retrenchment. With Santam Legal Access, you'll receive free legal advice on almost every legal aspect, whether the specific matter is covered by your policy or not. For true peace of mind and legal protection when you need it most, Call us on 061 292 8000. Santam. This is freedom.
Wild and free. It feels so sweet, makes me feel like
Daar het vanmiddag 'n paar druppels in die hoofstad geval, maar gaan daar vir ons nog 'n paar val môre, kom ons gaan vind uit. Op Katimamulilo is sonnige dag môre met 'n minimum van 19 grade Celsius en 'n maksimum van 32, gedeeltelik bewolk in die hoofstad met 'n minimum van 19 grade Celsius en 'n maksimum van 31 en bewolk op Oshakati met 'n minimum van 21 grade Celsius en 'n maksimum van 33. Op Swakopmund gedeeltelik bewolk met 'n minimum van 18 grade Celsius en op Ariamsvlei is sonnige dag met 'n minimum van 25 grade Celsius en 'n maksimum van 39 en gedeeltelik bewolk op Reebot met 'n minimum van 21 grade Celsius en 'n maksimum van 33. Arbeidskenner Herbert Jauch saam met my in die Kletskompas ateljee. Mr. Jauch, how are you doing?
No, very well, thank you for the
It's good to have
invitation.
you here. I've been so excited for this discussion all day. I've heard you know quite a lot about labour issues.
Yes, that's
And
been
there
my
is a
life.
labour issue going on at Namib Mills.
Yes.
I believe it's been 2 weeks now?
Yeah, even more.
More than that, yeah. What my big question with this is, what effect does this have on the lay person? You know, people haven't been working for 2 weeks. Namib Mills produces, you know, very basic food products, you know, your top score, your pasta, polana,
Yes,
those things.
yes.
What effect does this have?
The effect is on two levels. For the general public, the stocks might run low very soon, because after a 2-week strike, what they had kept in reserves for the shelves in the shops might run low very soon. For the affected workers on strike, the effect is far more dramatic and immediate, because according to our labor law, the employer does not have to pay during a strike. Now, when you're already in fairly low income brackets, where you struggle to make ends meet with just the
With
income
what you have, yeah.
and now you lose 2 weeks of wages. This is a major crisis in many households. So workers would not go lightly on strike. It's a huge sacrifice for them. But of course also the company will lose income the longer it drags on.
Yeah, and in such long strikes, does it become harder to then negotiate, or does it become easier as the tension kind of grows?
It becomes actually worse. And often the result is that there's tension building beyond the strike. So even when people go back there might be a very tense situation. That's why most employers try to avoid that scenario and try to reach a compromise in a negotiated settlement. However, in this particular case, it seems management wants to dig in, and it's especially bad when employers develop an attitude of, let's teach them a lesson, knowing what the sacrifice is for workers and then wanting them to suffer more. If you do that, you actually destroy good labor relations for years to come. It's a very short-sighted, it's almost like, if I may, a political Donald Trump approach to labor relations. You either do what we say or we bomb you to smithers.
My way or the highway.
Exactly. And that is the worst in terms of what Namibian labor relations set up wants to achieve. So that's also why we have relatively few strikes that last that long. But it seems here at Namib Mills now it's a dire situation. But I guess in the next few days we will see some movement. Even the Employers Federation has now called on government to get involved somehow in the mediation to find a solution. So my sense is that probably in the next few days we'll find some resolution to this conflict.
And one thing I've always wondered about, and maybe this is a bit of a stupid question, but how do you prevent victimization in a workplace going back from a strike? Like you said, there's tension, and that tension rolls over even after the strike. How do you prevent that kind of a thing? You know, a manager saying, "Hey, but you were the big dog in the strike, so I'm going to nail you now."
Yes.
How do you prevent that?
The only prevention is if you have a union and shop stewards at the workplace that monitor that very closely, because the Labour Act is very specific on that. It's immediately unfair labour practice. But of course, that's the one thing, the law itself. So preventing it is by monitoring it closely, and the moment it happens, you take on that manager, you launch a grievance internally. If that doesn't solve the matter, you report it to the office of the Labour Commissioner. And as I mentioned before, then that's a scenario where the effect of the strike goes way beyond the actual event. It poisons labor relations. I was once called in Walfish by another company where it reached a point where workers were standing outside the building waiting for the managers to come out to have a physical fight with them. Got that bad. Then the company realized the way they've managed affairs is just very poor, and they asked me to assist them to sort out the tensions, and it was a complete restructuring, doing away with basically everything they had done, and say you value people also as people themselves. You take their concerns seriously. You move away from unilateral decision making, and over time the company then even appreciated the suggestions that came from workers and said, but this actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But it was a tough road to travel, and when you have a strike like now, Namib Mills, it is often a sign that something in the way the company is run is wrong, and it needs a relook, and threatening people, trying to victimize them afterwards makes matters worse. Then you go from one conflict into the other, and even the much talked about question of productivity is affected by that. Because when people are unhappy at work, when they feel not valued, when they're insulted, when they're victimized, the trend is then you do the absolute minimum. Why should you do anything more?
You don't care much for what happens to this company.
They in any case pay me peanuts.
We know that. We
Precisely.
know that line. Yeah.
So it's also from a company perspective very short-sighted. If you want to now show your muscle and we must show them who the boss is, these unions think they can have a big mouth. That is a no-go. Yeah. But unfortunately, it persists.
Yeah. And like you say, a strike is a very dire situation. There are steps and moments and actions before workers even go on strike. What are the kind of signs that companies should look out for? What are they to do, in those warning signs when they see those flashing lights go off? What are they to do to prevent this kind of a situation with their workforce?
The first thing is a level of honesty. I remember some years back a negotiation where the company told workers there is no money, and a week later they published in the newspapers the increase, I think it was an 80% increase in profits. Sure. So when you then go to your staff members and tell them, sorry, there's no money for increases, it's a blatant lie. Yeah. So this is the first thing that must stop. In fact, when an employer says we don't have money, they should open the books internally, not in the newspapers, just internally. Say, look, these are the audited financial statements or whatever they have. This is the scenario, and then have an openness to say, where can we possibly save so that some money can be used for salary adjustments or for bonuses or anything else. And do that with what is called good faith negotiations. That you don't go in and you preempt already the outcome, but you have an openness to do that. That is usually the best within that structure that we have, that you say, okay, we need to be open and honest, but within that framework, we can look at ways of distributing that money more fairly. And that is what's often lacking. So employers play that game of, we tell them just there is no money, full stop. And then take it or leave it. And of course, if that happened a few times, mistrust grows, and then you end up with tension. But also earlier thing, when there are tensions at the workplace, don't let them run. Address them head on. Sometimes it's a question of attitude, sometimes it's a question of disrespect. Sometimes it's a structural problem that needs to change. Don't wait for things to escalate. If you want to find a solution early on, sit with people, discuss it, and look at resolving that before it becomes a major crisis.
And then I'm very interested to hear your opinion on what's happening at the municipality at Walvis Bay. From government level, they've now received directive to say stop paying your security company because the security company doesn't pay the security workers minimum wage. Obviously, we've been very, the Afrikaans word is consequent. We've been very serious about the minimum wage, which obviously is a very important thing, not just, legally, but like you said, people just work better. What is your opinion on a government-related entity being told to stop paying a company because they don't pay minimum wage?
It shows a level of disregard by that entity, in this case the municipality, for the well-being of workers. This minimum wage is in itself a low amount, given the costs of living. It amounts, if you're full-time employed, 45 hours a week, something like 3,400 a month. Now, security guards till now don't even get the full minimum wage. They are amongst those workers where it was phased in. They're like in the middle now. I'm not sure about the exact amount, but they don't yet get 18 per hour. Now, when you subcontract security services, you must, as an employer, make absolutely sure that all laws are respected, including labor laws, including the minimum wage. That's a legal requirement. Also that the company gives annual leave, sick leave, maternity leave, all those things that are in the Labor Act. If you don't do that, then your attitude as in this case a municipality is, well, we just want to get it as cheaply as possible, but we do not care about what workers experience. So for central government to then have to give a directive to them is a very poor testimony to the way that should be absolutely common. We had a problem also at national level with construction companies that got huge government tenders and did not pay the minimum wage to construction workers. So the union then went to government and said, look, these are the companies that offer fair conditions. They are the only ones that should get tenders. Why do you give it to tenders, sometimes foreign companies, that don't even pay the national minimum wage? And this is like, if you're serious about just uplifting to absolute minimum levels, you would not tolerate such things. So it's not only happening at local level, there it happened at ministerial level, central government. And that's a poor sign. So then we must ask ourselves, are we really serious about improving conditions, or is it just to say we have a minimum wage, but with the implementation we are flexible, or we look the other way?
Yeah. So is this something that comes up often? We obviously, in the tender process, we look at the lowest number. Whoever can give it to us the cheapest, that person gets the contract. Is labor something that gets skimped on in the tender process? Very often.
And there it was that even the Construction Industries Federation, together with the union, approached government. And the argument was basically, in the construction industry, the competition is often on the basis of wages, because materials need to be bought by all the companies, often by the same supplier. You can't make a difference. So where does the price difference come? And often by squeezing workers. And that's where the Construction Federation, the Industries Federation, as the employer, and the union negotiated, at least for each level, the minimum wage, to say we mustn't have competition for which the workers pay the price. We must at least have a bit of a balance and safeguard minimum standards, which was a very good approach. And there it was particularly ironic that then government was amongst the main culprits that gave it to companies that did not form part of the agreement and did not adhere to it, although it was legally binding. And so it happens, unfortunately, very often. It comes only in the news when workers raise the issue. But very often, because workers are so vulnerable and unemployment is so high, it's like, oh, we don't want to raise it, otherwise we are seen as troublemaker, and a few weeks later we are retrenched and others get brought in. So this fear of losing jobs and income plays a big role in suppressing that information.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us. I could have this
Thank you.
conversation forever and ever about the new minimum wage law and everything. We'll have you back another time
Gladly.
to chat some more. It's been so lovely to chat with you. Daarmee dan die einde van vandag se episode van Kletskompas. Baie dankie dat jy by ons aangesluit het. Onthou, jy kan weer môre om 8:00 by ons aansluit op Netwerk Televisie, DStv 285 en GoTV 25 of oneup2.com. Maar tot môre, is dit my bly.